It was
her
much
quiet voice. No, it was probably like, "You dreadful child, only a mother could love you."
Oh, Augusta. It's cute. I love Augusta. I wish she was my mom.
I gotta tell you, reading Deviant, and if you're reading Deviant and trying to flirt with people, I feel like there is a there is a fucking problem like working through in my body. You know what I mean? Where I just keep seeing like flashes of Augusta.
Right.
Whenever I'm talking to a woman.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh no. That's what I
you
want.
are. When you go on dates, you're supposed to break down walls. You're building them up, Henry, reading things like that in public.
Oh, yeah. And there's actually another book about Ed Gein that I also took some information from. It's called Psycho. It's not as good as Deviant, but if you're an Ed Gein fanatic as I am, it's worth the read.
Why aren't there any books just called Farmer, Friendly Guy Around Town, Psycho and Deviant? These are very leading titles. Artist might
that's
work.
the problem. Yeah, they're very judgmental.
I think so.
And I can't believe, the kind of judgment heaped upon this guy.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, yes, he had a fucking cardboard box full of salted pussies that he would drape over his own dick and balls. But he also was a son and a brother.
He was a son and a brother. We'll figure out what happened to his brother here in a second. But,
So Ed's first experience with death came around the same time as the bread incident. Not too long after Eddie's birth, his mother took complete control of the family's destiny and opened her own grocery store in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
This is also interesting. We're going to find later on with the only two victims that Ed has that he loves local businesswomen. His mother was she was a very solid businesswoman and a go-getter. Like, that's why it's like when it came down to the rely on Augusta Gein, because she was the only one getting shit done.
She was, and this was not an easy thing for a woman to do. This is the 50s, maybe the early 60s at this point.
Oh, no, this is 1912, 1910.
When she opened the supermarket, it was 1910?
Yeah, it was
Holy shit. So you think about what a woman's role was in society then, and this chick goes down to La Crosse, Wisconsin, your typical traditional Christian place. No one wanted a woman to own a supermarket, and that's how strong Augusta was.
Oh,
She literally had to take the supermarket from the man who owned it before by putting him in a headlock.
Yeah.
And like, you don't think I can't choke you to death with my own tits?
Exactly. She did everything like one of those the glow wrestlers, gorgeous ladies of wrestling people.
Just get hard thinking about it.
So there was a building behind the store where the family slaughtered the animals.
Can I read a passage from Deviant about this?
Please.
Behind the meat and grocery store was a windowless wooden outbuilding which he was forbidden to enter, Ed. As a result, it exerted Ed had seen animals being led into the rear of the shack. Big-eyed heifers and grunting pigs. And on several occasions he had heard a fearful bellowing coming from behind its sagging boards. Curiosity blazed in him. One day, when his parents weren't around, he went out through the back door of the grocery and stepped quickly to the prohibited place. The door was open a crack, enough for him to peer inside. There, hanging upside down from a chain in the ceiling, was a slaughtered hog. His father stood to one side of the animal, holding it steady, while his mother slipped a long-bladed knife down the length of its belly, pulled open the flaps, reached inside, and began to work at the glistening ropes of its bowels, which slid out of the carcass and into a large metal tub at her feet. Both his parents had on long leather aprons, spattered with blood. He must have made some sort of noise. Oh, jeez, Louise.
Something like that.
Mother turned completely around to look at him. And for the rest of his life, he remembered the moment with an uncanny clarity. The dangling beast, its carcass split open, its guts slopping onto the ground. His mother standing beside it. Blood and slime smeared down the length of her body.
Yeah, I love it. And it actually reminded me, we used to go to one of my favorite strip clubs in Wisconsin was called the Slaughtered Hog. And my second favorite was, of course, the Dangling Pig.
I love the dangling. I would have loved the Dangling Pig because of the trapeze act.
Yeah.
I like it when my strippers have a lot of theatricality, like, mixed in.
You come down to the Dangling Pig Tuesdays, free beer from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m.
and thank God the tragedies ended, and the tragedies finally ended once they fully supported that ceiling. Because I mean, the Wisconsin stripper.
Oh my God. Well, we won't get into that. That's a whole episode, Wisconsin strip clubs. But it's interesting to me that they didn't want him to watch the slaughter of the animals. They did have some sympathy to the idea that this would scar a child.
Because that's what they said. One of the more they talk about how when he was growing up he had a lot of feminine qualities, which his father fucking hated. Yeah, Giorgio hated how attached he was to his mother. He thought he was a mama's boy, which is the truth. It's what he was.
Yeah, he's the definition of it. Yeah.
But he would cry horribly all the time at any sort of provocation. He was very weak. He was very sensitive.
Yeah.
A little too sensitive.
Well, George,
you know what I mean?
If George was just more of a father figure, I think the whole house structure probably could have worked out a little bit better.
Oh, yeah, I think so, too. There were a lot of mistakes made in the Gein household.
Right.
So in 1913, Augusta decided that the Geins would be farmers. So the small, miserable family bought a homestead outside of Plainfield, Wisconsin, the same home that Ed would eventually do all of his horrific deeds. The appeal of the house in Augusta's extreme isolation, as she had come to regard La Crosse, Wisconsin, where the family had previously lived, as a modern-day Sodom, where hussies ruled the streets.
Yep, gals there, they showed a little ankle, It was ridiculous.
It's 1913. How much skin could they have shown?
Well, they can show a lot. There's definitely a lot of clothing that has to cover it up.
There's a lot of surface area that could be exposed.
Sure. I love the supermarket, though. That would be crazy to be, know this story and then to have actually shopped in the Gein family supermarket.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
very interesting.
Yeah. So
just fucking Ed just sitting there with a steak on his head, just being like, "Have you seen my new hat? I think it's fun. It's keeping the sun out of my eyes. But I keep getting all this blood in my mouth."
Oh, good kid.
So really, Augusta didn't really care all that much about him. Ed was her project. Ed was her special little guy. And Augusta thought that out in the wilderness, he'd be safe from the influence of all of the harlots. The house, it was just surrounded by nothing but meadows, marshlands, just little clumps of dying trees, and acre upon acre of pale, sandy soil.
That's exactly what Ed needs. He needs isolation.
Desolation, isolation, loneliness.
Should he be around educated people who might try to help him with his mental problems? No. Put him near the bushes. Put him near the
specific. This is one of the specific stories too, where a little dose of Lady Gaga.
Oh my God! Again, yes. Where was her in her meat dress? Speaking of people who like to wear animal carcasses for clothes.
Ed was not a happy child, nor was he particularly well liked by any of his classmates.
By who? Yeah, by his 3 classmates.
800 people. I don't know. That's probably a class of like 25 or something.
Maybe 25.
I grew up in a town of like 300-400 class.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, he had a few.
All right.
Yep.
So I would also put it this way. Yeah, so this is also from Deviant. The problem is that he would try to watch how people act and imitate their behavior.
Right.
But from the point of view of his peers, there was definitely something a little different about Eddie Gein. At no point in his life, not at any rate until his simmering psychosis erupted into full-blown dementia, did anyone perceive that he might be a dangerously disturbed individual. And in fact, it would have taken a fairly sophisticated eye to see in young Eddie's behavior, his social incompetence, for example, and increasing isolation. But there were things about Eddie that certainly struck his schoolmates as peculiar. The way his eyes kept shifting around whenever he talked to you. The odd, lopsided grin he always wore, even when the conversation had to do with the deer hunting accident that killed Eugene Johnson, or old man Beckley's heart attack. His habit of laughing at weirdly inappropriate times.
Yeah.
So he were listening to some strange private joke that no one else could hear.
Wow, that's amazing that you just mentioned the only 2 ways to die in Wisconsin. A deer hunting accident or a heart attack.
Or a serial killer. The thing about Ed is that in addition to all of his behavioral problems, he also had a slight physical defect. His left eye drooped down just a little bit further than his right.
Because he had a very heavy mole on it. And they called it his saggy baggy eye. And then next thing he knows, all those people are fucking furniture. So watch what you say when you're a kid, guys.
Absolutely, yeah. He did get some perfect revenge on any of the bullies that he had to deal with in school.
Oh, definitely.
No, it was just poor old women.
Yeah, really, for the most part. He doesn't seem that strange to me, though, yet at this point. I mean, I think he could be saved still.
He definitely could have
Yeah.
been saved. I mean, I was a pretty sensitive kid.
Sure.
You know, I would cry quite a bit. But anytime that someone made fun of his eye, he'd cry and blubber about it for days and days. And that was another word that they used
Yeah.
quite a bit in Deviant, blubber.
They didn't have any
'cause you
sugary snacks or good television shows to distract him. There was no through Kimmy Gibbler, you know.
But there was a lot of people that, I mean, I remember kids like this in school all the time. We were talking about this before, and you talk a little bit about this in Sex and the Human Activities, which I don't listen to, but I saw the title. I just can't listen to Jackie.
I
talk
know.
about her vagina. It's very interesting because when I was a kid growing up, I was friends with all the weird kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it was. So you would have been friends with Ed Gein.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very difficult because you go to school, you be all shifty-eyed, you're kind of stinky and you're kind of odd, and then you go back to Augusta. So the education process it really stopped there once he got home.
And
But these are the reasons why people like Rick Ocasek learned how to play the guitar.
Love
This is how you
that.
get women. This is what you do. This is how you make friends. You got to acquire a skill.
Yeah, well, he did have a skill, I suppose.
I mean, it was a very isolating skill.
Yeah,
He
no-
couldn't
Yeah,
really...
all the whittling of bones. That's hard to put on a resume. It's hard to put in a Tinder bio.
Yeah, you would.
I mean, it worked for Marcus, but technically, I mean, he's got a charm about him.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm a little bit better looking than Ed Gein.
a little bit.
Yeah. So Eddie, this guy, completely isolated, both emotionally and physically, unable to make any friends at school, and every other moment was spent in the company of, as you say, Ben, a drunk, bitter, abusive father and a domineering know-it-all mother who just constantly asserted that the world outside of the Gein farm was just a place of utter despair and sin. And as far as
Perfect soup for a killer.
It is. I mean,
Delicious serial killer soup. I love to hear it.
that's the thing. We're not talking. People used to call Plainfield little Las Vegas. You know, I mean, it was a wild town. They had a light, and
They had a whole stoplight.
they had one. And man,
I hear
wild.
if you go look around a corner, you'll find they got 3 mailboxes.
Holy hell! I mean, it was going to the devil.
in fact, anytime Ed would just start to have the beginnings of a friendship at school, he'd come home and start telling his mother about it because, of course, he told his mother about absolutely everything. And she would just, I mean, it would start with this just kind of low, let me tell you everything that's wrong with this kid. There's this thing that's wrong with him. There's this thing that's wrong with him. And, oh, did you know his mother did this? And, oh, did you know that her father did that? And then by the time she was done with her tirade, she was screaming in his face about the most innocent thing a kid can do is make a friend at school.
It's a nice thing for you to do if you're a child to make a friend at school, and good parents encourage such activity. And you know, by the end of this rant, her titties were out and her face were sucking one of her nipples. Now come back. Now come to mommy,
This
Eddie.
is what you need. Yeah.
Yeah. Do your friends have these big mustard cakes?
No, mother, they don't. They certainly don't. But one day I will. All over the house.
Corner. In that corner, you know where you put the sugar? I'm putting nipples in the sugar.
At least we can say that Ed celebrated the female body.
He was the most. We talk about a lot of these serial killers being very misogynistic, being very anti-woman. We cannot say Ed Gein was anti-woman.
Absolutely
No.
not.
He had problems with, like, the skull bones.
Yes.
And problems with the parts of the women that he didn't really could use or wear.
Sure.
But, yeah. Otherwise, he was very respectful of women.
He was.
Yeah, and especially of his mother, because she just hammered into his head that if he was not in her immediate presence, he was not safe at all, especially from the temptations of women. And every woman, other than Augusta, was painted to be a wicked, tainted creature. And somehow, I don't know how Augusta came upon this conclusion, but she decided that all of the ills of the world could be blamed on the hussies on the streets of Plain.
I mean, did she think that girls were just throwing themselves at young Ed? Is that what she
while just
imagined?
staring at his feet, playing with his pocket, just going like,
Yeah.
you know, I just I don't know what to say. I just think skeletons are fun little playing blocks. I don't know how I even think that,
Oh,
Will you be my
Ed.
friend?
I want to be your friend, Ed.
So when rain made it impossible to work the farm, Augusta would gather her sons around her old rocking chair and read from her Bible. One of her favorite verses was from Proverbs, but this one she didn't need to read because she knew it by heart. And this, I think, sums up pretty much everything you need to know about Augusta Gein. The lips of a strange woman drop honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But her latter end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Now, therefore, my sons, hearken unto me, and depart not from the words of my mouth. Remove thy way far from her, and cut the door of her house. For why shouldest thou, my son, be ravished with a strange woman, and embrace the bosom of a stranger? What, my son? And what, O son of my womb? And what, O son of my vows? Give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings.
And now this
And-
comes
yeah.
from chapter 4 of the book of Sexless Nerds.
Yes. And of course, the reason she loved that passage so much is George ate her out one time and came up and said, "Oh, that tastes like great bitter wormwood." I love that
Your
bitter.
pussy tastes like wormwood.
No, yeah, love that
'Cause I put
wormwood.
some wormwood in there.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah.
I wanted it to taste bad so you wouldn't get a liking for my labia.
Oh my god. Why do I want to see his mother's vagina so bad? I just have to know.
I'm thinking about it.
Oh.
Now it's like fixtured in my head.
Yeah, it's so bad.
And after passage, she'd sit her boys down and instruct him in the ways of masturbation. She'd
Right.
just tell him, like, over and over again, like, just masturbate, just masturbate. The sins of Onan are preferable to the sins of the foul women.
So Mom, is this technically? Are we having the talk? Is this the talk?
We have to talk every night.
Oh, okay. Oh, these poor Henry too.
Oh.
We forget about the older brother in all of this, who's just like, what the fuck is happening?
I just straight up believe that Henry just never spoke.
No, I don't think that he did. I really don't think he did. Between drunken George and crazy Augusta, Henry was a rock and a hard place.
And speaking of George, he would meet the end of his ultimately pointless and miserable existence.
Killed in a hunting accident?
Oh, no. Died just drinking himself to death.
All right. That's the fourth way to die in Wisconsin.
It was said by locals that he died with a smile on his face. And this is amazing. He died. Henry was 38,
Right.
and Ed was 34.
And was the mother still reading them these chapters
Yes,
from the Bible
yes,
at this
yes.
point? Okay.
They
Absolutely.
would literally sit like little boys next to her while
Right.
she read from the Bible to them every single night.
Yeah. Okay.
I
But yeah,
mean, the
older
idea
than you
makes
think they are,
makes
you
me
know.
hard. This whole situation makes me sexually aroused.
Yes, well, we know that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just not cool. You know what I mean?
I mean, you're nearing 40 years old, and you're just like, Mommy, is it time for story time tonight again?
You
It's
it's like when you
terrifying.
meet like a 38-year-old DJ who like works at a club and stuff, and a part of you, it's like, grow up and get a real job. This is a 38-year-old man who sits on his mother's knee while she reads from the Bible.
And teaches him the ways of masturbation.
And remember, this house, no electricity, no indoor plumbing.
It does sound so fun, though. Can we go camping? I want to get out of here.
Yeah, camping on your father's struggle to make it to your fucking huge mother through the rickety walls. Can I ask an honest question? Because I was thinking about this while I was reading this, of course, and not sexually, not like masturbatorial in a way. Do you think that she molested them?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, other than mentally and... yeah, she molested him in a way.
Mentally raped them, yes.
I'm
Yes,
sorry, I
and
meant to say, did she molest them?
Oh, molestation. She molested
because,
them.
I just wonder, because when she said that she taught him the ways of masturbation, I was just like, and this is the way you do it. You gotta pull on it. You gotta pull on it.
I bet you that she did. No, I'm sure she did.
It's possible.
Isolated. Yeah, of course. She probably watched him. She probably made him do it in front of him.
So when George died, Eddie picked up what little slack there was to pick up by taking on various odd jobs as a handyman. He also became kind of a babysitter for local kids.
I will say, this is kind of a good thing that George was a raging alcoholic, because when you do responsibilities on, but Ed's like, oh, he didn't do nothing.
Yeah.
So I just have to sit on the couch for 3 hours a day now, more.
Who in their right fucking mind would choose the guy with the saggy eye who's always half retardedly smiling? Like, what would possess you to ask him to be babysitter of your children?
Oh, come on. He's a loving guy.
Yeah, a bit of an oddball. Now that is the adjective that comes up over and over and over again with Ed Gein. Bit of an oddball.
Yeah, he was a bit of an oddball.
He was. It's Plainfield.
But he was good with kids. He was great with kids. He would roughhouse with the boys. He'd do magic tricks for the girls.
Yeah.
And he'd tell them creepy tales of headhunters and cannibals.
I would say if I was a 7-year-old boy, I would love when Ed came over.
He would be my best friend.
Yeah.
Like, I would love him.
There's certain things. Well, it's also, this was during his time period when he became obsessed with adventure magazines.
Yeah.
Which was at the time.
Not all of them.
Like a lot of them. So is the Bible. So.
Yeah, a few of them. So now that he was grown up, he could relate to kids, but of course, adults could not relate to whatsoever.
Right.
He was considered a good neighbor, but soft-spoken, a little foolish, but overall polite and decent. The only person who had a bad thing to say about Ed Gein was the local barber, who described Ed, who admittedly cut his own hair.
Yeah.
He described him as, quote, a filthy thing.
It was also really rough when he started wearing those belly buttons as earrings. That was really hard on the neighborhood.
Right. But this barber needs to keep his mouth shut. The barber is like a priest. What is said in a barber shop should be kept quiet, and it should be secret.
Is that the
Ed
barber?
is also, what they said too is that Ed would always come and help. Like, if you ever ask Ed to come to work on your farm, he would come help. And they said, like, one characteristic about him is that while he looked very slight and solidly strong.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a part of, I guess, just farm life. I don't know.
Yeah.
I grew up in the fucking bustling cities in New York City, so I had a sharp mind and quick feet, and I had to fucking graffiti tag my way across the bip-bopping boroughs.
No, it's farm life. I could beat you to death, Henry.
Yeah.
Like, easily.
I know.
You described the movie The Warriors, Henry. Your life was not like that. You're a bit more like a George Gein, but without any alcohol.
Oh, I got booze.
So Ed, his relationship with Henry, pretty good. He got along with his brother for the most part. Henry, definitely a little more independent than Ed, but Ed looked up to Henry because Henry actually got a job outside of the Gein farmstead. He oversaw a crew of Jamaicans on a public works project, and for some reason, Ed considered that to be the highest achievement.
And how hasn't that been a major? The Jamaican construction crew working in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Those poor men who had to go talk about culture shock.
Yeah, in 1952.
It's like they're like, all right. What we're gonna do? It's about Jamaican, Wisconsin construction workers. We're looking at it's like a cross between Cool Runnings and 12 Years a Slave.
Okay, perfect. Those Jamaican, I would love to hear the Jamaican story of what they thought of the white culture of Plainfield.
They probably just kept silent and looked around, and there was like, is there a safe place where we can talk? Because everybody's in the woods. They always hide out in the woods. He dressed like deer, man. He dressed up like deer. You can't tell who's white and who's just a deer, man.
I agree with that. It's crazy out there.
There was only one thing that Henry and Ed disagreed on, and that was Augusta. And it took a baffling amount of years for Henry. Maybe Ed was a little too close to his mother.
I feel like Henry was very sensitive about the issue. You know, Henry wasn't like, oh, Augusta's a crazy wench woman who's holding you back and is the reason for your mental retardation. He's like, maybe maybe take an hour away. Just an hour apart.
Because Henry seems like he's like sort of normal. And he's looking at himself just being like, I need to be normal. I need to figure out how to fix my life. And then he's looking at Ed, and Ed's really really not normal.
He loves
Ed
it.
is like the actual thing of an oddball, which is when you're up close to an oddball and you realize, oh, he's a total deviant and fucking
Absolutely.
psychopath.
It's like Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise. They were both Scientologists, but eventually Nicole Kidman woke up, and then Tom Cruise is Ed Gein.
But he should play him in a movie.
He should.
That's the movie I want to see. Just Ed Gein.
Ted Cruz is Tom Cruise is Ed Gein.
Him all ripped.
You want to do like this Theron thing?
Yeah.
Where you try to make her ugly, but she's still pretty hot.
Yeah, yeah.
Still hot, still banging body, yeah. And it's just him just like still having sex with like Penelope Cruz like out in the field, but then, you know.
I hate it. I hate Hollywood. I hate that Hollywood does that. Eileen should have been played by a real ugly woman who understood what it was like to be an ugly gal abused by men.
Well,
You don't
I mean,
understand in Los
ugly.
Angeles, they take ugly women and they put them into camps and they gas them.
That's,
Right? This is what happens in Los Angeles.
You would
It's a
know.
cruel place.
I believe you.
So Henry, he actually didn't criticize Augusta in the least bit, but there was an implication there that if Ed was spending a little bit too much time with Augusta, then Augusta might be wrong.
And you know Ed thought about this for this was the thing he was thinking about for weeks.
Yeah. He just, and possibly even years. Because 3 years after George's death, because after George died, that's when he started to think, isn't the best thing for me. And who knows?
I
he
will
may have
give him credit.
He
I
may
will
have
give
stuck
him credit.
around.
Right.
Because he definitely thought about it. Because they said during this time period he went, because then he went on the only trip that he had ever went on in his life to go sign up for the army. And he was trying to figure out what he could do. And they were like, "You can't take you in the fucking army. Who are you? Get the hell out." As soon as he showed up, he's like, "I'd like to be in the army because I think it'd be fun to have a gun." And they're like, no.
Absolutely
Please
not.
just go. Just get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
But so he knew that things were a little unusual in the house.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't go try to join the army when you call a bayonet a butter knife. And he definitely, no one was going to take him.
Yeah.
So when Augusta yells at him and tells him that nobody wants him, she's not lying.
Well, she's made him that way.
Well, right.
Yeah, she has made him unlovable, essentially, by anybody except for her. And he doesn't really want to be loved by anyone except her. His intent on Augusta, and the only love that he wanted in this world was the love of his mother.
Yeah.
And 3 years after George's death, Henry Gein would be dead as well. And this is a matter of speculation, huge speculation, probably the biggest matter of speculation surrounding Ed Gein, that he may have actually killed Henry.
I'm just going to start a little whisper campaign right now. He did it. He did it.
He may have done it. I think there's a strong possibility that he did it.
He did it.
He may have also been killed by the elements while fighting a runaway brush fire.
Yeah, but then they found him and he had no burn marks on him and his clothes were completely fine and he was choked to death.
Okay.
That was the thing. They found him and they said that maybe the fumes from the fire had caused him to asphyxiate, but it was just like Ed who found him. Ed was the only one with him.
Right.
He went out and, he was like, oh, like he did the thing where he saw Henry choke and he was like, help. Ooh, somebody help. Like quietly, 911. Help. Help. My brother's dying. Whoop.
Yeah.
Help. Until he was good and dead, and then he ran and got help.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, this would require Henry to be like, I like to go down to fires and just take a deep breath. I mean, because he never caught fire.
Well, they were fighting fires from both sides. You know, they were trying, it was on their land. They were trying to save it. And Ed, he said his version of the story is that they split up. He went back to find Henry. Couldn't find him because darkness was starting to fall. He went back to town, but when he brought authorities back out, he was able to go straight to Henry's body.
Nailed. See, that he wasn't creative enough to, like, stumble upon it.
Yeah,
just kind of fake it.
No, and when they
I can't
asked him,
believe it.
and when they asked him like how he was able to lead him straight to the body, he just kind of shrugged and said, "Funny how that works."
What work? Please,
It's not funny how it works, Ed. There's nothing funny about it. It's your brother. He's dead.
That is a funny joke, Ed. That is
It
a
is
funny.
funny, isn't
that
it?
is-
Funny how
did-
that works.
I just don't think that police arrest 1998.
It's
When was
just-
the? I mean, you could do whatever you wanted back then.
They worked
They
a
used
little.
the Robert Durst explanation for many years of just being like, he had his reasons.
Yeah.
Well, they weren't big on investigation for a really long time.
No.
Like, it was just because they thought, it's like, you know what, there's no way that, little old meek Eddie Gein could hurt anybody, much less kill him.
He had also been known in town for having an extreme aversion to violence.
Yeah.
That he wouldn't even go hunting, which is like a fucking very weird thing in Wisconsin, especially in that community where everybody went fucking hunting.
Everybody.
They actually called him, I forgot about this nickname they called him, Eddie's just another weak-acting Casper Milquetoast.
Yeah, that's a very, very high insult. Oh, that's high. That's an insult in the highest degree in Wisconsin.
So Casper, are they talking about Casper, Wyoming?
No, Casper the ghost.
Oh.
Little scaredy cat.
Oh.
Scaredy
No,
ghost.
I think this was before Casper the Ghost.
No, Casper the ghost was around in the early 1900s.
I don't think history that
Oh,
well.
I know my history.
You just like funny things that look like globs of semen.
I laugh at a lot of strange globular things.
So Ed finally, after all of these years, he finally had his mother all to himself.
Oh.
It was just Ed and Augusta in the house, but the domestic bliss wouldn't last, for soon after Henry's death, Augusta would fall victim to a stroke.
Oh,
she would be in and out of the hospital for a few months, and Ed finally tending to her every need. He was finally able to just have her completely in his control.
Can I read her favorite Bible passage that
Yeah.
he would have him read to her while she was on her deathbed?
Yes.
Thank you. O Lord, rebuke me not in thine anger, neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure. I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are vexed. My soul is also sorely vexed. But thou, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. O save me for thy mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of thee. In the grave who shall give me thanks? I'm weary with my groaning. All the night make I my bed to swim. I water my couch with my tears. Mine eyes is consumed because of grief. It waxeth old because of all mine enemies. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, for the Lord hath heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord hath heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer.
I love it. It sounds like Prince of Nottingham from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Or King of
A
Nottingham.
little bit of Rael in there.
Yeah, great. I love that. Very fun.
So Ed was able to tend to her every single need, but her end would come in the winter of 1945, a week before her death. This is the trigger for Augusta's death. Ed traveled to the farm of a man named Bill Smith to buy a little bit of straw. Augusta, she's still on the mend from her first stroke, but she had absolutely no faith in her son as a negotiator, so she came along, of course. They drove.
There's no place to escape to.
This is the last podcast.
On the left.
From your glade.
That's when the cannibalism started.